Many are grieving the loss of an entire family in the River Oaks area after Houston police say a man fatally shot his two young children and wife before then killing himself.
The couple owned two popular Montrose restaurants.
On the morning of May 4th, 2026, nothing about that house looked different. The address was 2113 Kingston Street, River Oaks, Houston, one of the most prestigious zip codes in the entire state of Texas. The kind of neighborhood where the lawns are always manicured, the driveways are long, and the houses sit behind iron gates like they are keeping something precious inside. And that house, that particular house, belonged to two people this city had just celebrated, awarded, applauded. 9 months before that morning, Houston looked at this family and said, "You are the best of what we are." Nothing about that house looked different. The street was quiet. The gate was closed. The address sat the way it always did. Composed, beautiful, giving nothing away. If you had driven past it that morning, you would have seen exactly what you expected to see. A home that matched its neighborhood. A life that matched its reputation. And then a babysitter made a phone call, and a relative made a phone call. Two people, separately, on the same afternoon, feeling the same thing crawling up the back of their necks, that something was wrong with a family that, by every visible measure, had everything right. They hadn't heard from them. Not that morning. Not the night before. The silence had stretched past a point where silence is normal, into the kind of silence that makes your hand shake a little when you reach for your phone. Police arrived just after 5 p.m. They went inside, and what they found in that house, in that beautiful award-winning Instagram-perfect house on Kingston Street, was something that nobody in that neighborhood, nobody in that industry, nobody who had ever sat across from this family and shared a meal with them was prepared for. The children were in their beds. You're watching 3 a.m. Files. Step into the hour when the world sleeps and secrets come alive. Tonight, we're going inside the Mitchell family. A story about success, silence, and the terrifying distance between what a life looks like and what a life actually is. Stay with me, because this one does not let go. Before we go any further, if you believe that real victims deserve more than a headline, that their names should outlast a news cycle, that stories like this one should be told with the weight they deserve, please like this video right now. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell icon. It is the only way we keep doing this. It is the only way that Mitchell's name stays alive in rooms where it matters. So do it now while the story is just beginning. And let's get into it. My Mitchell grew up in Houston. Not the glossy version of the city, the real version. The working, striving, first-generation immigrant version. Her family ran a Vietnamese restaurant. And as a child, she didn't just eat there. She worked there. Weekends, holidays, the hours when other kids were doing other things. She was learning, whether she knew it or not, that food is not just sustenance. Food is how people show love. Food is how a family says, "We are here. We are open. Come inside." That lesson never left her. She went on to earn degrees from the University of Houston and Penn State University. She moved through corporate hospitality and retail. She built herself with the kind of quiet, deliberate intention that people who grew up watching their parents grind tend to develop. And somewhere in that building, she met Matthew Mitchell. Matthew was 13 years older. He was not a simple man. He had studied in France, Italy, and at Oxford University in England. He had worked as a journalist in London, Paris, and New York City. A man who moved through the world like the world was a classroom. Then he pivoted entirely, entered pharmaceutical research in Texas, and became the president and CEO of a clinical research company. A decade in that world. Then another pivot. He trained at the Art Institute of Houston and turned toward food. Together, he and I opened Traveler's Table in 2019. The concept was everything they were. Global, warm, rooted in the belief that sharing a meal across cultures is one of the most human things you can do. Houston embraced it immediately. Guy Fieri came. Food Network cameras rolled. The restaurant became a destination, not just for food, but for feeling it gave people. In 2024, they expanded with Traveler's Cart, a more casual street food concept. In 2025, the Texas Restaurant Association named them the Greater Houston Restaurateurs of the Year. From every angle, this was a love story wrapped inside a business story wrapped inside a Houston story. I also launched a fashion line in 2023 called Foreign Fare. She sat on the board of the Texas Restaurant Association. She was mentoring younger restaurateurs across the city. She was, by every account, a woman in full bloom. Her colleagues described her in language that was almost startlingly consistent. A ray of light, a force, a woman who commanded respect without demanding it. Someone who lifted every room she entered. Eric Sandler, who covered Houston's food scene closely, said something that stayed with me. He said that I was never happier than when she was helping other people celebrate. That traveler's table had become a beloved venue for birthdays, for big groups of friends marking big moments in their lives. That being part of other people's joy, that was what gave her life meaning. Read that again slowly. Being part of other people's joy gave her life meaning. And she was pregnant, expecting their third child. Alongside 8-year-old Maya and 4-year-old Max, there was a new life coming, a family still expanding, still building, still becoming. So I need you to hold all of that in your mind right now, because this is where the psychology of this case starts to move in a direction that is deeply uncomfortable. We have a woman at the absolute height of everything she ever worked toward. We have a restaurant empire that a whole city adored. We have a pregnancy. We have 2 children who were loved and celebrated publicly. We have a home worth over $1 million in one of the most coveted neighborhoods in Texas. And we have absolutely no public record of anything being wrong. Not one prior police call to that address. Not a single domestic disturbance report. Not a welfare concern. Not a noise complaint. Not a whisper from neighbors or colleagues or friends that something inside the house was quietly falling apart. Nothing. The surface was not just intact. It was gleaming, which means one of 2 things has to be true. Either everything really was fine until something snapped without warning, or something had been deeply, carefully hidden for a very long time. Now, let's talk about Matthew more carefully, because I think people have been so focused on the shock of what he did that they have not slowed down enough to really look at who he was. Matthew Mitchell was a man who had reinvented himself completely, multiple times over. Journalist, pharmaceutical CEO, art school student, restaurateur. That kind of repeated reinvention is not unusual in ambitious people. But it does tell you something about a man's relationship with identity, with who he needed to be at any given moment in his life, with the gap between the self he presented to the world and whatever was living underneath it. He also had no social media presence. None. In 2026, for a co-owner of 2 Houston restaurants with a public-facing brand and a growing following, that is genuinely striking. And here is what makes it more striking. I noticed she wrote about it publicly. In a birthday post from August 2025, just 9 months before her death, she wrote about Matthew with warmth and humor. She said that when they first met, his complete absence from social media made her convinced he was either a con artist or a secret husband with 5 kids in the suburbs somewhere. She laughed it off in the post. She called him a guy who just preferred books and newspapers. She ended it celebrating the man who could juggle children and business meetings and street market adventures like a professional. That post has resurfaced everywhere since the news broke. And I want to be careful here. I am not saying that avoiding social media is a red flag in isolation. Plenty of grounded, healthy, private people want nothing to do with it. But what I am saying is this. Di herself, with love and laughter in her voice, publicly described her husband as someone whose interior life was opaque, as someone who, from the outside, looked like he could be hiding something. She meant it as a joke, as a testament to how well she had eventually come to know him, that she had decoded the mystery and found something safe on the other side. But she wrote those words 9 months before May 4th, and now we read them differently. Here is a clinical term for what happened inside that house: family annihilation. It is a specific and deeply studied phenomenon in behavioral forensics. It refers to cases where a family member, almost always a father, almost always someone with controlled and private outward presentation, kills the entire family unit. Researchers who study these cases have identified consistent patterns: financial pressure beneath a successful surface, a perceived loss of control or status, a distorted and possessive sense of ownership over the family, And most critically, a decision that is made, not a rage that simply explodes. These are not crimes of passion. They are crimes of conclusion. The children were found in their beds. Sit with what that means for a moment. Maya and Max were not caught in some chaotic crossfire. They were not killed in a moment of explosive, uncontrollable violence. They were in their beds, the safest, most ordinary, most innocent place a child can possibly be. And they were killed there. That level of cold deliberateness is almost impossible to process emotionally. It means this was not a fight that escalated beyond control. It means someone moved through that house with a purpose already decided. And then there is this. No note was found. No letter. No explanation left behind for anyone. And in behavioral terms, that absence speaks almost as loudly as the act itself. When someone leaves nothing, no words, no justification, no final message, researchers say it typically signals one of two things. Either the act was impulsive, which the evidence here directly contradicts, or the person believed that no explanation was necessary, that in their own internal world, what they had done was already logical, already complete, already closed. That is the most chilling possibility in this entire case. Not the rage, the silence after. Now, investigators have not released a motive. The case remains under active investigation. And I want to be honest with you the way this channel has always been honest with you. We do not know if there was financial collapse happening beneath the surface of those restaurants. Dye herself had spoken publicly just months before her death about the very real financial pressures facing the restaurant industry in this economy. We do not know if something was fracturing inside the marriage that no one outside had ever witnessed. We do not know what Matthew Mitchell was carrying in the weeks and months leading up to that Monday in May. What we do know is what Dye was. We know she was a woman who came from nothing and built something extraordinary with her own hands. We know she loved her staff the way some people love family, and mentored strangers the way some people mentor their own children. We know she was carrying a new life inside her. We know she had an 8-year-old daughter named Maya and a 4-year-old son named Max, and that both of them were found in their beds on a Monday evening, while the neighborhood outside looked exactly the way it always did. We know that her sister Lai posted on social media the night the news broke. Photos of Dye, photos of the children. She wrote, "We are heartbroken to share that my sister Dye and her beloved children Maya and Max passed away last night. Our family is grieving deeply and asks for privacy during this incredibly difficult time." She did not mention Matthew in that post. Not once. Read into that what you will. We know that the Houston restaurant community flooded social media with tributes that read less like professional condolences and more like grief torn wide open. Real grief. The kind that only comes from losing someone who genuinely changed the temperature of a room just by being in it. We know that strangers began leaving flowers outside the house on Kingston Street. Orchids, roses, photographs pressed gently against the iron gate, and that those flowers were fresh, because no one had known long enough yet for them to wilt. And we know this above everything else. Dye Mitchell did not choose this ending. Whatever was collapsing inside Matthew, whatever conclusion he reached alone in the silence of a mind that left no record, no note, no explanation for anyone. Dye and Maya and Max and the child who never got to be named were not the cause of that collapse. They were the cost of it. And I think that is the most important sentence in this entire story. So let me ask you what I always ask here at 3 a.m. Files. Not the comfortable questions. The ones that stay with you after the video ends. How does a man stand on a stage with his wife, accept an award, shake the hands of people who admire everything he has built, and 9 months later do what Matthew Mitchell did inside that house? Is that the portrait of a slow internal collapse that no one around him had the tools or the access to see? Or is it something more deliberate than that? A man who had always kept his interior life completely sealed, and eventually turned that same sealed-off quality towards something unthinkable? What about the pregnancy? Behavioral researchers consistently note that major life transitions, a new child arriving, financial pressure mounting, a shift in identity, or in the balance of power within a relationship, can serve as invisible tipping points in cases that look exactly like this one. Does the timing of Dye's pregnancy mean something here? Or is that a thread that leads us nowhere and the one I keep returning to in the hours when this case refuses to leave me alone. What did Dice's final moments look like? Did she know? Did the woman who once laughed in public about her husband being a mystery, who trusted him enough to build restaurants and raise children and carry his baby, did she see it coming at all? Or did the last thing she ever feels simply not make sense to her? Because the man across from her was the same man she had written about with love 9 months earlier. The same man who preferred books to Instagram. The same man she had decoded and decided was safe. We may never have a full answer. The investigation is ongoing. No motive has been released. And in the absence of answers, what we are left with is a woman who poured herself into community, into food, into family, into joy of other people, and a house on Kingston Street that on the morning of May 4th, 2026, looked exactly the way it always did. Nothing about that house looked different. That was the last thing it ever had in common with the life that used to live inside it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This community handles these cases with respect. Dice's family is still grieving, and her children deserve to be spoken about with dignity. But talk. Share your theories. Tell me what you think was happening behind those walls. Because silence around cases like this is exactly how they get forgotten. And we do not forget here. If this story moves something in you, if Mitchell's name means something to you now that it didn't before you press play, subscribe to 3 a.m. Files. Hit the bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The only power this channel has is the community behind it. And I and Maya and Max and the child who never got a name, they deserve a world that does not look away. We don't look away here.